important things which happened in the Greek history, but it's not only a Greek history, but the history of the area in which we live and nearby countries, and also maybe it's very important for the developments in the world in the 20th century, which also touches things which we live now and which takes place even here now. And sometimes we are not these connections, but this is important to know. Okay, Elisavet. Where is my Elisavet?
I will share my screen now.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, just.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, before you are doing this, let's say something. Okay. The Asia Minor Catastrophe, it is 1922. But to speak just about Asia Minor Catastrophe won't be the right thing, because you know everything is connected. And not many people might know many things, even about the Greeks, about the Greek history and everything. That's why some information, just some glimpses of everything what can be said about this. Now, Greek people today come from the country of Greece. It is South Europe, and it is on in the coastal area of Mediterranean Sea. So Greeks also lived in communities along the Black Sea coast, well, which was known as the Pontus. Well, it is connected with the Greek expansion and establishment of the colonies when they went to the Aegean Islands. Then they also navigated the Black Sea, and also they navigated the Mediterranean. So we're talking about two areas. One will be Pontus, it is Black Sea area, and Greeks who lived the ancient times there. And then we'll be talking also about the area of nowadays Turkey, Smyrna, or nowadays they call it Izmir. Now, we all know, and we always speak about the cradle of the Western civilization, and it goes back to the history of ancient Greece. Then another thing which always is mentioned in all of the books of history, or in other books also, and information which is also giving to the people, it is the creation of a democratic form of the government. Then another thing, and we had the lecture on this, it is the Olympic famous games, Olympic competitions. Then another thing which is very important, and sometimes maybe, well, some people are forgetting, it is the creations of philosophy in reality as a science. Yes, critical thinking existed, and in nearby area, critical thinking and critical thought existed, but the system of knowledge, which we can say and call philosophy or friends of wisdom, well, was created in this place. A lot of achievements also from ancient times were done in medicine. If you go to some of the archaeological sites even nearby Athens, or let's say to Epidavros, you can see that even in ancient times they would be using different forms of treatment of different diseases, and making also the surgeries on the patients. So any field, any subject you will open, always there would be dimension, there will be some lines at least about the achievements which were done in ancient times. It would be mathematics, it would be literature. Well, and of course, very important things, it is connected with the development of the theater and development of drama. Now, another thing, it is the words which are in common use. It's more linguistic approach to everything. We are using Greek words almost every day. Doesn't matter which language we speak, but all the Indo-European languages are using, well, at least once a week, the word which is of a Greek origin. Why it is? First of all, it's terminology. Terminology, and now when we have so many things said about medical studies and medical achievements, medical things, there is all the time we can hear some words which are of the same origin, which were already known in the ancient times. So, but another thing, it is that the Greeks developed also the concepts. Concepts, these are not just the words and combinations of the words for the sake of talking, but concepts are connected with the analytical way of thinking. So all these things, well, we're developing in this small place which we know as Greece. And one more thing I would like to mention about this, it is that in the area of nowadays Greece, we had the development of three civilizations which are very important. It's a rare thing, and you cannot find even in other parts of the world that there would be the development of three civilizations, but we have here in this small Greek land. This is Minoan, this is Mycenaean, this is also Cycladic. Now, there is a lot of different things going on in this area. A lot of different people passed by this. Different things were taking place here. And one of other things which would be important, it is the building of the city-states and the origin of politics through the discussions, through the different ideas which were expressed. And also, you see, all these achievements of the Asian world were then transmitted to the Roman Empire, which spread it towards the Mediterranean area and up to the area of nowadays England, well, and also put the foundations for the Western civilization. Okay? Another thing you see, what you have to see, well, the migration of the people were always new, and what was going on? Well, the people, Indo-Europeans who came from the northern parts of nowadays Europe, well, they also settled in the areas, and here it is, I think I will give it to Elisavet, and she will show us the map, how these people were spreading in the area. Okay, Elisavet?
Yes, sure. So this map represents the territory of Greece and Asia Minor, and also it shows the movements of the Greek people from their mainland to the Black Sea. On the north of Asia Minor, the shores of the Black Sea, this is where some tribes of the Greeks settled. And let me go to next slide. Alexander the Great then brought Hellenism to Asia Minor after he captured it. And he also brought with him additional Greek colonists who then spread the Greek language, art, education, and government. So cities, the Greek cities of Asia Minor flourished during the Hellenistic period and Roman times from 323 to 146 BC. The Roman Emperor Constantine I then captured the city of Byzantium in 324 BC, and this city much later was renamed Constantinople and became a city of the Great Empire, the Byzantine Empire. In Byzantine Empire, Christianity became the official religion.
Yeah, thank you. Another thing, Byzantine Empire was a very important empire. Why? And it was not an accidental thing for that period of time at the beginning of the Christian era to move the capital from Rome to nowadays Istanbul, it was Constantinople, and it was into the place of a Byzantine colony, which was established in ancient times by the Greeks. So the Byzantine Empire served as the buffer, as the protector of the European land. You see, because all the times there would be invasions from the east. They would be moving in waves. So, and well, it's also important that it became the center of Christianity. There is a very important monument to the Christianity. It's Hagia Sophia. This is a wonderful basilica which was built in Constantinople, and a name was given because of the person who gave the ruler, the emperor, who gave the name to the city. And it was built already in the 4th century AD. So even now, you see, the architecture of Hagia Sophia is amazing. It stands for so many years and nothing happens. Even the area is seismic. Now, another thing which would be also very important, this is Pontus. This is the coastal area of Black Sea in nowadays Turkey. Well, this would be also important for the development of the Silk routes, and for the Middle Ages, especially the 6th century AD. The Byzantine leaders, rulers, they would value this a lot. They wanted to find out the secret of the production of the silk, which they did. And they kept it as a secret, as a state secret. It was not given to the people of the businesses, but it was the productions of the court. So Pontus also would be presenting a good place how to defend the Byzantine Empire, which was very big. Everything what remained from the Roman Empire, well, of course, was under the control of the Byzantine Empire. There are many, many things which can be said about the Byzantine Empire, but simply we cannot have this time. But maybe if not for the existence, richness, wealth of the Byzantium, maybe today's Europe wouldn't be in existence. Elisavet?
Yes, and I would also add that what we call Pontus is basically the Black Sea. From Greek, it means the hospitable sea. Just because before the Greek tribes, people thought that this sea was very dangerous, and that the tribes lived on the shores of the Black Sea. And then when Greek invaded this area and settled there, they called it the hospitable sea. This is why it's called like this on this map. So this is the territory of the Byzantine Empire, which includes the Asia Minor region, and the green color here represents the Muslim lands.
Already in the 7th century, yes?
Yes, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the Ottoman Empire. So by the time of Ottoman conquest by 15th century, the number of Pontian Greeks was about 700,000. And this is a map of the Ottoman Empire, which includes the area of the Black Sea and goes all the way to northeast of Africa. So during Ottoman rule, Pontians fought to save their identities as Christians. But many of them still had to keep their faith, their culture, their traditions in secret, because Christians were treated as second-class citizens. Their schools and churches were destroyed. And by 1890s, many ethnical groups in Asia Minor, including Turks themselves, were just exhausted from this tyranny of Sultan Abdul Hamid II. And they called for change in one's dominant empire. So, as a result, in 1908, a radical ultranationalist party called Committee of Progress and Union, but mostly known as the Young Turks, won the elections, and they had this slogan: freedom, justice, equality, and fraternity. First, Christian population was relieved to welcome the new government because they were even offered their own representation in the parliament. And after years of oppression, it gave people a sense of hope for prosperity. But this somewhat short-lived peaceful period was short-lived, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, it's a little bit in a hurry, everything what we said about Byzantium and then the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire, although it existed for several centuries and everything, and of course the history is huge, and we can say many, many things, but the conflict or religious conflicts would be always present in the policy of some of the sultans who would be ruling. Now, let's come closer to everything what is connected with the tragedies of the 20th century. Now, first of all, we have to remember that, you see, 19th century was the century of the development of ideology of nationalism, which was coming, of course, from the Central Europe, when they would be also involved into the several revolutions and everything. And what happens, you see, this was also influencing somehow in the 20th century, and what Elisavet mentioned about the establishment of a different form of governmental rule, or at least the attempt to establish this, well, is connected with the spread of nationalism. Nationalism at the beginning of the 20th century would be very, very strong in the area of the Balkans. Area of the Balkans, it is Greece and all the countries which are not from Greece nowadays. Of course, there would be a lot of manipulations of the great powers at the time, but still, you see, nationalism, especially the Slavic nationalism, would be very strong. Well, everybody wanted either to be united or to be separately establishing their own states. Well, 1912 is the year of the starting of the famous Balkan Wars. Balkan Wars, and they would be bringing some maybe benefits for the European people on the Balkans, because it would be the time, for instance, that some of the territories of the Ottoman Empire would be liberated, and well, they would be talking about the establishment of the new borders in the Balkans. So Greece, for instance, got back its Asian territories like Crete. There were a lot of discussions about the northern parts of Greece, and there is a lot of things were done at this time. Well, what happens in other things, you see, this brings the start of the Second Balkan War in the 1913. Well, again, they couldn't find the solutions. There would be the conflict in between Serbia and Bulgarians, well, these alliances of the Balkan states and everything, well, which somehow was finished in 1913. But there was another thing, the cause of the start of the World War I. Well, when we speak about World War I, World War I is, we remember, starts in summer in August 1914. Well, always, okay, this, and it starts with the beginning of the Third Balkan War. Well, when the Germans, and German state already was a united state, and they would have their own interest. The main interest was in getting the access to the oil. Even at the time, it was very important. So they, pushed Austria to start the war. But before there would be the alliances which would be created among all these great powers of the time. So using as an excuse the assassination of the Serbian Archduke, the war started in reality in Serbia, which later on would be bringing the start of the World War I. And if you will see, you see how these powers were divided. Central powers would be Germany, Austro-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Ottoman Empire. Why? You see, Germany was dreaming to build up a railroad through Ottoman Empire towards the areas where they could get the access to the oil. On the other side, you see, and there were different negotiations, different things, and who would be in these allied powers of which would be against the central powers. This would be Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Romania, Japan, and United States. You will ask, where is Greece? Greece at the time would be keeping neutrality. Greece would be keeping neutrality until the 1916 because of the different political situation in the country. Okay? Okay, then, everybody went to the war with enthusiasm. Everybody was talking about that this war will bring positive results, that this war will clear the air. But everybody, representatives of different parties, representatives of different social circles, everybody, you see enthusiasm. But everybody forgot that big wars, great wars, are bringing also something which is a huge disaster and brings new developments, while sometimes positive, sometimes negative. And the result really was like this. But during the war, you see, we have also, when the Russians are entering the Ottoman Empire, and Elisavet will show us interesting things.
Yes. So this photo is of the great city of Trebizond, which was located on the shore of the Black Sea on the north of Asia Minor. And the majority of population in Trebizond were Pontian Greeks. So during Russian occupation in 1916, they were able to flee to the territory of Russia, mainly to Caucasus and the Black Sea region.
Mm-hmm. It was very beautiful city, by the way. Well, and
yes, it was very rich.
Very rich, yes. Well, you can say, what is this?
Yeah, this is, we came across this photo, I think, in your laptop. It's the mayor of Trebizond next to the Metropolitan of Trebizond. He was very famous for his for how he played his role in political situation of the city. And so he addresses the Duke of Russia, Nikolai Nikolaevich, in the yard of the house of the businessman Konstantinos Theophylaktos. As far as I'm concerned, Konstantinos Theophylaktos is actually a relative to Dr. Michailidis, right?
Well, for instance, on the picture, well, it was a very, very well-known family in Trebizond. Well, all the money, everything were in the hands of the Greeks in reality, you see. So they were bankers, they were very famous business people. And on the picture, you can see the sister of my grandmother, you see. So when the Russians entered, and Nikolai Nikolaevich is a brother of Nikolai, brother or cousin. So he was the leader of the Russian army. So it is in the yard of the Theophylactus house, beautiful like a palace. I had the chance to visit it. Well, of course, it is not anymore belongs to us, but it belongs at least to the orphanage which they have in Trapezon. Okay, then it's very nice, but another thing if it is nice, you see. Now, the war, if from the beginning there was an enthusiasm and there was the support of the armies on both sides, then somehow it happened so that, you see, this war started to bring disaster, and of course it would be also connected with propaganda which was made by the Russians who would be moving towards the revolutionary activity. So what happens with the soldiers? They cannot already are not satisfied with this existing situations. They understood that in reality they are dying for the interest of some of the games which are played by great powers. So, and they are turning slowly against their own governments. What happens in the as a result of everything? Well, 1917, it's the time when there is a revolutionary activity in Russia, because the war brought very bad economic situations to Russia. So people were hungry, and it was the time when they have to start fighting with their local government. And it was with the Tsarist government. So Russia withdraws from the war by the end of 1917. Then another very important revolution takes place in Germany. Germany also is already almost defeated because of different developments during the war. And then what happens, you see, again, the big powers of the time, they are trying to keep kind of the positive developments in everything, and they try to stop the war. They tried to stop the war in 1918, and then in 1919 there is a peace conference which took place in Paris. So Paris conference, well, it's famous. Well, by the time also the United States also entered the war, and well, Germany of course was defeated. Well, then the negotiations which they would have would bring in reality not the stable peace, but they would bring the shaky truce, and will open the new road to the development of the new war in the 40s. So these were the main developments at the time. And well, but on the other hand, even before it, yes, even before it, you see, well, there was the division of the areas which were suffering during the time of the war. Okay, and these all agreements which were made were, of course, were not always bringing positive results. Elisavet?
Yes, so in 1918, Turkey was given a truce by the Allies, but still the massacres of Christians never stopped. The Young Turks came to power by promising equality for everyone, but their government would come to the cruelest end for Greeks and Armenians. Mm-hmm. There was the peace conference in 1919, where the Allied leaders stated their desire to build a post-war world that would safeguard itself against future conflicts. And This is a map of Greece claiming its territories at the peace conference in Paris. Greece was at the time under administration of Venizelos, and the black marked area is the territories that they claimed. So the northern part of Turkey, the shores of Black Sea, and the western part, the shores of Aegean Sea, would belong to Greece. And the shaded area on the west is the territory where French and Greeks had conflict on.
Yeah. Yeah, so, well, when we speak, you see, about all these divisions and everything, and what happens in these alliances, what happens in these agreements, what would be the result of everything. Well, World War I transformed the Middle East. So they divided the Middle East areas. We have to speak about Asia Minor Catastrophe, but it is connected. You see what happens, you see. Europeans, in reality, they were dividing all of the areas in the Middle East. They were dividing it among themselves and calling this as the areas of not colonization, not the establishment or re-establishment of the colonies, but the areas of the protection sometimes, well, and different things. So they took the territories of Arabia, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. So the modern boundaries of the Middle East emerged from the war. So, well, immediately there would be the reactions and the start of the modern Arab nationalism, okay? So there were different mandates which were assigned. You see, we were trying to squeeze, but there are so many things which is important to know. Then another treaty which would be very important, it would be signed in 1920, and it will be, I think that the next maybe it will be the Treaty of Sevres. Well, this how it was supposed to be divided, the area of nowadays Turkey, or still Ottoman Empire, which it was officially known at the time. So you see that they divided it. It was supposed to be divided among French, about British, about even Greeks. They had to take some of the territories nearby the Constantinople. Well, Armenia had claimed its own things. So you see, all these things were discussed even before the start of the World War I. Okay, another one.
Yes,
yeah.
So Christian massacres were mainly organized by three Turkish governments. As we already mentioned, they increased during the reign of Sultan Abdülhamid II, and later on picked up by the Young Turks. The last ones were organized by Mustafa Kemal, also known as Ataturk. Mustafa Kemal claimed that all population, Greek and Armenian male population from the age of 18 to 45 would be treated as prisoners and sent to camps, while the other half of Greek and Armenian population had to leave the country by October 1st. Armenians and Greeks were driven from their homes, expelled from their country, or systematically murdered. They were targeted by the Turkish regime, and they were viewed as the First World War enemy within. So Armenians and Greeks were deported into the interior of Turkey, where they died of exhaustion and starvation. People were forced to march on foot for hundreds of miles in deserts, in mountains, and they were not allowed to bring many belongings with them. This is a photo of what was called death marches. And the belief was that these massacres were actually justified because they were forming a new nation with a new identity. So punishments for being a Christian were harsher, and purges became more severe. even though Christians were already the biggest taxpayers of the country, and destroying them took away much needed revenue for the state. And every community had to send their young men to military service, where soldiers, especially Christian soldiers, were treated so brutally that they escaped the country to avoid the military.
Yeah.
So gangs of Turks broke into people's homes and abused the families on the pretense of looking for those who escaped the military service. Violence against Christians was not punished, and Turkish nationalists, they rounded up bankers, merchants, journalists, teachers, clergy. They tried them in court, found them guilty on some trumped up charges like treason, and sent them to death. People were pulled out of their homes, which were looted and burned down. Women, children, and the elderly were hanged or deported to the interior of Turkey or taken into forced labor.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. And this brings exactly the things which we would like to concentrate more, maybe. This brings also the tragedy of Smyrna. Smyrna was a city in the Aegean, which was founded around maybe 11th century BC. Through its history, it was on cross routes of trade routes, and always was a very rich, very beautiful city, starting from the ancient times. Well, there are many other things which we can speak about Smyrna, but in the 19th century, 20th century, it was the richest city in Ottoman Empire. It was maybe one of the richest cities in the area of Mediterranean. Well, it was not only the richest city, but it was multinational, multi-ethnic. People lived in peace from different national origins, you see. Now, and if you you hear the stories about this, you see, you can see that a lot of merchants would be arriving to the city, while they would be bringing sometimes very unusual things. The trade was blossoming, and Harbor was one of the great sites of Smyrna. Well, they were wonderful companies which were functioning, companies from all over the world at that time. They were beautiful, beautiful shops, and it was the place which would be full of nice things to spend time, to live in, and as if it was that city which is described by Voltaire in his famous Candide. So who would be living in this city? This would be Greeks, this would be Armenians, this would be Turks and Jews. They would be controlling in reality all the economy. Elisavet, maybe the next one, let's see.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Susie, may I add something? I'm so glad that you went into the history of Smyrna. And it might be of interest to you for me to tell you that when I was a college student, 1965, I was in Chios and I crossed over to Smyrna.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that English was useless. It was before English started catching on as the language that the Japanese will speak and the Chinese, and the international language of tourism and so on. But Greek was very useful. I spoke Greek to all these Turks in the businesses here and there, and everybody understood me. The city was very Greek.
Yeah. Well, these the Greeks who still lived there, you see, and when you hear these stories now, well, of course, these old people, well, I don't know how many of them still alive, who were children at the time when they left the city. But the stories which we hear, that you see, if somebody would go in the evening and they would like to go for a walk in the evenings, then they would be saying, well, let's go to Armenian parts of the city, because they would be trying these Armenian wonderful things, different things to taste this, or to Jewish area, to this. So it was so beautiful, so nice. Well, all of them, of course, knew the Greek language very well. Well, Turkish language also was needed to know. Mike, for instance, grandparents, they spoke in addition to Greek and Turkish, European languages. But you see, it was so cosmopolitan city. And I think, Elisavet, you can say also certain things. Thank you, Stan. It was very nice. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Spikas, for adding. Yes, so actually many Greeks in the past, they moved from Aegean Islands, especially from Chios to Smyrna, because this was a city with a Greek population, but it was a greater city than the city of Athens at that time. Greek population numbered 320,000, and they had virtual monopoly on trade in sticky figs, sultanas, and apricots, for which Smyrna was very famous. Greeks also owned many of the city's flagship businesses, including the two largest department stores, which sold imported goods from all over the globe. The Greeks and the Armenians were city's chief merchants and bankers. The city's vast wealth was created by centuries by the famous, powerful Levantine dynasties, and its factories teemed with Greeks, Armenians, Turks, and Jews, just how Dr. Michailidis said. It was a very cosmopolitan city, and they all lived in peace. And they created this majority Christian city, which was very unique in the Islamic world. Unfortunately, to the Turkish nationalists, it was just a city of infidels. And these two pictures, the picture with the girls, it's the American quarter of Smyrna, and this is the American Collegiate Institute. It was one of many charitable organizations in Smyrna, and the other picture is the European quarter of Smyrna. It was very wealthy, it was very rich, and the building in front, it's a sporting club for high circles of society. So basically the city was divided into different quarters, into different parts, like the Greek, the Armenian, the Turkish, the Jewish, the American. So yes, it was a great city.
Yeah, and another thing later on, you see what happens. Well, it was kind of the triggering Greeks to participate in this post-war war. So in the 1920s, you see, with the support of British, sort of French. Well, the same thing happened, by the way, in the Arab countries of the area. They were supporting the Greeks and Greeks with the famous idea that they will get back all of these possessions which the Byzantium would have. Well, of course, followed this thing. So they were rather successful from the beginning. They managed to occupy Eastern Thrace, large part of Western Anatolia, Turkey, and also defeated resistance outside of Constantinople and later almost reached Ankara. Greece, but almost from everywhere, you see, they managed to take a lot of the places in nowadays Turkey. But what happens, you see, what happens? Well, then the great powers stopped their help, they abandoned them, and you can imagine that the Greek army was in the middle of the place which was not familiar for them. They wouldn't have supplies, any of their supplies. And it was the time when Mustafa Kemal's troops were also launching the attacks on the British near Constantinople. They became rather powerful. And this slowly, they started to attack everybody who would be on the area of nowadays Turkey. So this forced the Greek military to come where? To come to the coastal area, mainly to Smyrna. And Smyrna, you see, well, Smyrna, of course, at the beginning couldn't even imagine that, well, something bad would happen. But then it became clear that, well, they are attacked by the Turkish troops. Now, these days, especially this previous week and Monday, is the time when all these events were taking place. September 9. So the Turkish militaries, they were on the road and they were nearby Smyrna. Well, people started collecting their things and they tried to leave this area. Now, then September the 13th was the most difficult day for Smyrna. It is a famous day when Smyrna was put on fire. So they put on fire mainly all of the European, American, and other parts of the city. Well, somehow the Turkish part of the city was not so much touched by the fire. And people were trying to leave, to reach by the small boats the nearby Greek islands to save their lives. So this, what was going on, it was a terrible thing, and everything what we hear and read about this is very, very bad and very sad. About 100,000 people had been killed and millions left homeless. So what happens later, okay? Elisavet found very interesting thing, well, and tell us what it is.
Yeah, so I found the short story written by Ernest Hemingway, because he was working as a war correspondent during the First World War, and he witnessed a disastrous sight of Greek exiles. And he was so distressed by this sight, he later captured these memories in this story. He wrote, quote, "The strange thing was," he said, "how they screamed every night at midnight. I do not know why they screamed at that time. We were in the harbor and they were all on the pier, and at midnight they started screaming." Another quote is, "The worst," he said, "were the women with dead babies. You couldn't get the women to give up their dead babies, that have babies dead for 6 days, wouldn't give them up. Nothing you could do about it, had to take them away finally. You didn't mind the women who were having babies as you did those with the dead ones. They had them all right, surprising how few of them died. You just covered them over with something and let them go to it. They'd always pick out the darkest place in the hold to have them. None of them minded anything once they got off the pier." So Ernest Hemingway was describing how the Greek population was basically struggling for survival in this disaster.
Yeah,
and still a lot of voices of the victims will not be heard anymore, and because they're blended with the thousands of others, we'll never know their history. But there is some first-hand recorded experience, and Thea Hallow's "Not Even My Name" is one of them. It's written about writer's mother, and it's a personal story of tough survival, which is a part of Pontus Greek's history. Reading "Not Even My Name," we can assert that we read in order to strengthen the self, and what matters the most when you read this is who you are, because we cannot avoid bringing ourselves to the act of reading. Thea Hallow reveals her method of using literature to shed light on some important historical phenomena, in this case, the genocide of Greeks. She wrote, this is the memories of her mother of death marches. Quote, "We had been on the road for about 4 months when my shoes wore out completely. Walking through this barren land with bare feet was like walking on pitted grass. The food we had brought was also gone. Each day brought another death, another body left to decompose on the side of the road. Some simply fell dead in their tracks. Their crumpled bodies littered the road like pieces of trash flung from a passing cart, left for buzzards and wolves. It was good fortune that victims died in the evening. Then we had stopped for the night. Then victim's skin could try to cover the body with a few grains of soil, using a spoon or stick to scratch the earth. But in the daytime, the soldiers kept our death march moving, ready with their whips to prod us on with a swift, stinging lash. This is a photo of Greeks exiles. In this case, they probably stopped for the night. And yeah, you could see the children without any shoes, and they walked like that for hundreds of miles.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Women, children, they were sold into slave labor, or the young girls would be sold to serve in the harems of the rich Turks. So there is a lot of disaster which was done at the time. So, and all these things have the descriptions in the Elias Lenesis book, and the photos, if you can, you can see these terrible things which were done at the time. So, well, by the way, when we read the book by which mentioned but Thea Harlow, you see, she came to the university. We had once the meeting with her and presentation of her book. She was touched with everything what she could share with us, and she was at that time her mother was still alive. Well, her mother was given to one of the ladies in Turkey and just for survival. Then with this family from Turkey, who later had to be fled to Syria, then they did everything what the family promised. They did everything. So and then her mother and marrying somebody ended up to live in the United States. But the memories of the childhood, you see, were still very fresh for this old, young, very nice lady. We had her photos also and everything. So these things, what maybe we have to remember always. So because Elisavet will tell us now something. This next slide.
Yes, the policy of ethnic cleansing between 1914 and 1923 resulted in over 2.5 million of Greek, Assyrians, Armenians losing their lives, which means that Greek population from 20% fell to 2% in Turkey. Mm-hmm. This was the first genocide of the 20th century, and the years 1922 and 1923 marked the end of Hellenism in Asia Minor. Because so many people were lost and Hellenic presence there was gone, this is known as the Asia Minor Catastrophe. May 19 is recognized by the Greek parliament as the day of remembrance of the Pontian Greek genocide by the Turks.
Yeah, I think, well, although we took a little bit more time than we wanted, but the topic is so big that, you know, but, well, the last one, which we can say about the movement of the Greeks, okay, you can say these things, Elisavet, and we'll finish on this.
Yes, sure. The outcome of the tragedy was the Lausanne Treaty, signed in 1923, and it provided a mass exchange of populations. So the Greek Christians who lived in the territory of Turkey and they survived these purges were uprooted from their lands where their parents and grandparents lived, and they left behind this land and went to either Greece, or some of them became refugees in Europe and the United States, or migrated to Russia, forming the diaspora there. The thousands of Greeks who converted to the Muslim religion were unable to leave Turkey and still remain there today. Only a small Christian population remained in Istanbul as a part of Patriarchate of Constantinople. And in my case, in my family, we come from the diaspora, the Greek diaspora that fled to Russia, and later on, from the Stalin's repressions, were deported to Kazakhstan. And I guess the last thing that I would also mention. So most of the Armenian and Greek churches in Smyrna were destroyed either by the fire or later by the Turkish nationalists. But there was one small church which survived. It's called Agios Vukolos, and it was abandoned in 1922. In the 50s, it was an archaeology museum, but then it was again abandoned. And only in 2008, it gained recognition as a cultural entity to be protected. And only in 2014, it repeated the ritual of the presence of Patriarch. It was the first patriarchal visit to the city in more than 93 years. And in his speech to the congregation, which was attended not only by the Greek refugees, but also by the Turks and many other ethnical groups, and including Turkish mayor of Izmir, the Patriarch stressed the importance of peaceful coexistence of different religions. And that, I guess, is the best way to finish our presentation.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry for taking this long, but I hope that it was worthwhile, just even in short.
No problem. It was an interesting presentation. Thank you for it, and bye, everyone.
You're welcome. Kostas Djibouti is our new president, so it's very nice to see him participating. Okay, Dida?
Yes, hello. My video's having some problems. So thank you, Elisavet and Susie. That was very, very, very interesting. So should we open it up to questions and comments?
Yes. Yeah, I think we have time.
Wonderful.
Yes, I guess Sharon has the first question.
Yes, I would like to ask you, why do you think that the Islam religion spread in Turkey and not in Greece?
What do you mean spread in Turkey and not in Greece? There is the Muslim population in Greece, in northern Greece. We have to remember that the area was belonged to the Ottoman Empire. Everything would belong to the Byzantium, and Byzantium was the huge empire, which was by religion was Christian, by language was Greek, and with the use of some Latin, and then an administrative system which was half and half, everything what was left from the Roman Empire, and also they would be using many things from the Persian and Arab sources for the administration. But on the other hand, you see, when the Ottomans conquered all the area of the former Byzantium became under the control of the Turks. So Turks were before converted into Islam by the Arabs when they were coming in waves from Asia. So it was a natural thing when the Greeks got their independence, when they got their independence in 1821 and were recognized as the state in 1833. Well, of course, the population was more Christian and Greek.
Thank you,
Okay.
Doctor. Thank you.
Anything else? Stan, I don't hear you.
I am not sure if Kathy Geranios has left yet.
Yeah,
Because
I was
I
going to
wanted-
say that one good way of understanding all of this is to place it in the context of
Okay.
military history, because the great tragedy at the docks of Smyrna really was
Okay.
the last step in a campaign in a campaign from which the Turkish army drove the Greek army into the sea.
I don't know.
Okay, at the end of World War One, Britain assigned a Greek stewardship over the province of Ionia, which included Smyrna, and and even said to the Greeks that there could be elections soon in Smyrna to decide who would have sovereignty. So it wasn't even necessary to do the attack, which is why the Greek government that decided to try to conquer Turkey later was executed.
Yeah.
You see.
Yes. Anybody else? Your questions?
I have taken a coach from Istanbul to the Iranian border in the Turkish town of Erzurum in Turkish Armenia before I entered Iran, and that coach ride seemed to last forever across Turkey. And when you look on the map, you know, Turkey is a large hunk of real estate, isn't it? So, you know, it seems to me larger than going across Texas or something. So, I mean, that was quite a journey for the Greek army now to be invading Turkey, conquering every village all the way to the Iranian border. And then Ataturk, a brilliant general who had already been the star of the Battle of the Dardanelles, did a counterattack that was classical. The Greek, the British generals who wrote these military history books describing these campaigns said that it was brilliantly conducted, and he drove the Greek army to the sea.
Yeah, you see, we know that they were very good military people. That's why they were used even in the Middle Ages by Abbasids. They were used as the military people to protect Caliph at the time. Peggy, you wanted to say something.
No, I just wanted to introduce you to a lady who I had invited, but she just left for another meeting, Mrs. Geranios from the Daughters of Penelope.
She said
she's the chairperson.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. But
okay.
She just left. Okay.
Okay, and Holly had another meeting. Okay, anybody? What was new for some of the students? Yes, Anthony.
I just came in my mind. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but listening to you and to all the story and Dr. Sfika's explanations, I thought about the previous lecture we have regarding the 1821st revolution of Greeks. And I think we're discussing at that time that the Greek spirit of the trade spirit was so powerful, and people outside of Greece, they're helping the environment, the locals, and they inspire them, and they're having a great power, economical, and also from the point of the letters. And I think that besides the good explanation that we gave, that in Siran's question, why the Islam dominated the Asia Minor and not Greece. And I think that if you, my mind came to the other lecture we have, and that since Greeks are so powerful and they're not so ahead of the locals, we cannot the other religious and cultures that we have cannot enter, I think, the Greek territory. I don't know if
I agree 100% with the professor, and I like your answer.
I have to say a question. It's like I'm connecting these two things. It's like a question. Why?
I agree. I agree.
I also see that, you know, having this Smyrna vanished. They burned. No civilization at all. And we just have the remainings, the ancient remainings. And I'm going to share with you also an experience that I have in Chicago when I was very freshman in the university, and I was taking anthropology class, and I was in the class with probably Greek Americans and other people from the American environment. And they said, well, now we're gonna have a person that he's going to talk to us about the Asia Minor and tourist areas of this specific country. And there was a Turk explaining all and giving all the information about the civilization in this region. Showing the Asian monuments of the Greek monuments, the Ionian monuments there, the Saint Sophia that actually today was celebrating Hagia Sophia's name, and I was like very sad. I was very sad that, you know, because the people in the United States there and my classmates, they didn't know the history, and I was felt very sad for a person that destroy this kind of, you know, civilization to come back and say, you know, come now and visit. This is some things that we have to overcome, but because it's the reality in the past, in the past. But when you hear, when you're a young person and you hear in the radio of the Greek, the Red Cross, the missing people that they still having. When I was young and I was listening to the radio, that we looking for this person, and every day they having at least 5 minutes from the Red Cross talking about the missing people. Most of them, they are from the Asia Minor. And it happened in every I think Greek family. It happened. I have my grandmother. I saw in her room big picture of her brother, and I was asking her, "What is this picture? Who was this person?" And she was saying to me, "You know, he was my brother lost in Minor Asia." So, and you know, these things are very. Even you didn't know history, but just very well, but just you know, take things together from your life and the experience, you understand that, you know, the situation that happened and how heavy and how terrible was this catastrophe of Smyrna. This is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthi. Yes.
Anthi, I just want to, I also want to add to what you said and how sentimental and emotional these people are when they talk about that past. And I know I also see this, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I also see this with my father-in-law, who also, whose parents also came from Asia Minor, Smyrna, and who also, you know, lost family members. They lost siblings. And yet, you know, these people talk about these personal accounts and they become so sentimental and emotional, not though forgetting, as you said, where they came from, and also at some point wanting to go back, you know, to these places, of course, okay, that I imagine my father-in-law probably never, went back to these places that his parents were talking about, but he's still nostalgic today, reminiscing what they told him and wanting to go back to these places. You see, wanting to touch base with his roots.
Yeah.
And I think this is wonderful, So the fact that these people are not forgetting their past.
Well, we as Greeks in general, when we go to these places, I don't have any relation, family or any other. But when I went and visited these places, I couldn't help crying.
That's right. That's right.
And not only me, all my friends, everybody in the group, we were very deeply touched. And in these places, Smyrna is like you go to Greece directly, even though it's not Greek. It's like Alexandria in Egypt.
Yeah.
That when you enter those places, you feel the Greek blood that is there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely.
And
Yeah.
besides war, I think that people that they are entering in other countries, they have to respect civilization, at least in order, and then they cannot come back and sell this to other people. This is that was like a little bit painful for me, because when you put white stuff in Hagia Sophia and then you present it to foreigners that they don't know, it's unethical. It's unethical, at least.
Yeah, but who understands this? If they would understand, they would not do these things. Anybody else would like, or we will be coming to the end? And well, we have some people here, I see, whose family. Adele's, yeah?
Adele's mom. Adele's
Yeah.
mother.
Yeah.
My grandma, Christina, came from these places in 1922. And she used to tell us very strange stories about those Greeks that they couldn't do it. They remained in these places. And of course, in order to remain there, they had to forget about Christianity. There were some people that they had fortunes, they couldn't leave the place, they had some positions. And one of them was my grandma's brother. My grandma used to tell us that I haven't seen him since I left. She lost 7 kids during the travel from Turkey to Greece. And she was left with one of her kids only. It was a great tragedy for the family and for her, of course. And also my grandpa came from there with only 1 kid. And of course, he lost also his wife. So my grandmother, Christina, and my grandpa, Christos, got married, each of them with 1 kid from the previous family. And the family of my grandma, I mean the brother, he had only 1 brother. I don't know if this family still exists there, because he never left Turkey by any way. It is a whole tragedy. It is a tragedy. It is a tragedy, and the Greek people suffered too many
times.
Yeah. It's over and over again.
And I think that's why we understand the refugees. That's why we understand the tragedy.
Yes.
Because at the same time, we have the democracy and the respect to civilization. And I think this is very important.
Because we Greeks were too many times refugees everywhere. I mean, we haven't left any place not to be refugees. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Eleni, thank you very much.
Story repeats itself.
Thank you.
History.
That's right. Well,
it was a wonderful time for us to listen to all this lecture, and we enjoyed it very much, Susie, and we thank you and your student as well.
Thank you.
It was very informative.
Our wonderful Elisavet.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know what? I would like to hear also maybe from some students 2-3 words what we shared with all of you, because you see with the faculty, with us who are older than all of you, well, it's understandable because we lived and we met these people, and it is in our families very often. What the young people think, this is what I wanted to hear.
Well, I, for one, found it really informative. I didn't know about any of this, and it's probably because of my background as being American, and I was never taught this. So it's just insane to hear about the persecution. And I mean, I've heard of Christians kind of being, or Catholics being kind of victims of a religious, like, I guess, stigmatization. But it's just, this reached like a new level, I think, and it was really informative. And it makes me wonder about the situation now with refugees who are coming in, as the country is overpopulated, it seems. And so I'm wondering, I guess, where people would stand now compared to in the past, where, like with refugees, like wanting to have them be a part of a country that's safe, but also feeling like there's no room. So I'm curious what you guys have to say about that.
Well, in nowadays, you see a slightly different situation, you see. But again, these people who are coming to Greece, some illegally, some this, and we have also the students, you see, who are sharing also sometimes very tragic stories from everything. It's not an easy thing to leave behind everything and to go in nowhere. This is what happens in the people today. They are coming, in reality, they don't know. They are risking their life. They are leaving the place where there are the bombs and a terrible situation. But they are coming to the place which they don't know, or they risk their lives when they're crossing the sea. So you see, and why you always asking this question, why it should happen even now. Okay, Greece, whatever Greece can do for these people, maybe it's not the best things, for instance, the places where they live and everything, but still something at least, while sharing with them either food or something, it is, I think, a great help for this. Oh, Olivia, thank you for your questions. Well, Debbie, I think you learned many things and you can share also with your family.
It was really interesting to learn about it through this lens, I guess, because like my grandparents have talked about everything that went on and how my own family had to like leave the area as Armenians, but I didn't really know about it outside of that, like what all of the contributing factors to it were, because they never really taught us this in school, and so it was always just kind of like this missing piece of history that kind of comes up now and again in my own family and like sometimes in my education, but it's just been really eye-opening and very interesting and heartbreaking at the same time to learn about it.
Thank you. Okay, Dina, are you with us? We are finishing, I think.
Yes, yes, thank you. And I'll go ahead and stop the recording so that we don't have to have that. Okay, I will stop it now.
Okay, thank you.